Millionaire takes mistress to reunion pregnant wife, stays calm, then one move makes him panic. They said Maxwell Farnsworth had it all, an opulent estate in Martha's Vineyard, a thriving business empire, and a polished image that captivated everyone he met. His pregnant wife, Catherine Farnsworth, stood by him like a graceful pillar of support, admired by high society for her calm composure and unmatched dignity. Yet beneath the surface of glamorous galas and magazine covers, Maxwell harbored a secret, a mistress whose allure threatened to unravel his carefully curated world. When the date of his college reunion arrived, Maxwell made a reckless decision to flaunt his affair. Little did he know, Catherine had a move of her own that would make him tremble. Maxwell Farnsworth was the quintessential self-made man, or so the gossip columns proclaimed. He had risen from humble beginnings in Oakwood, a sleepy town flanked by miles of farmland, to become one of the most influential real estate magnates in New England. At 35, his striking features and confident stride belied the chaos simmering just beneath his polished surface. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a deep voice that resonated authority. From a distance, his life seemed a fairy tale. He owned Farnsworth Holdings, a conglomerate that bought up distressed properties and transformed them into luxury developments. Celebrities, hedge fund managers, and even European royalty invested in his ventures. His wealth afforded him a sprawling marble estate in Martha's Vineyard, where Catherine Farnsworth, his wife of 4 years, cultivated a reputation for warmth and philanthropy. She was pregnant, and the news of the Farnsworth heir had only increased their media visibility. Catherine was everything Maxwell was not: steady, sincere, and quietly strong. Hailing from a line of old money, she brought dignity and social grace to his otherwise meteoric and flashy rise. Wherever they went, the couple's presence drew admiration. Business associates were sure Catherine's calming influence was the backbone of Maxwell's empire. Together, they attended charity events, philanthropic galas, and investor retreats. Their luminous smiles seemed to confirm every rumor that theirs was the perfect marriage, an unbreakable fusion of love, power, and prestige. Yet Catherine sensed an encroaching storm. Behind Maxwell's radiant smile were moments of distance, unexplained absences, and guarded phone calls. With each passing week, the tension grew. She tried to assure herself it was the natural stress of overseeing Farnsworth Holdings. After all, he often traveled for work, hopping between Boston, New York, and various overseas capitals. But the looks he gave her seemed more strained than loving. She spotted unusual transactions on their joint credit card statements, expensive dinners in places. Catherine had never dined in hotel suites in cities he supposedly had no time to visit. Still, Catherine chose not to press him. She believed in his dreams, in the vision they had once shared. Perhaps, she told herself, it was merely the strain of fatherhood looming on the horizon. Maxwell had never been one to sit still. Perhaps the impending responsibilities weighed on him more than he let on. In the meantime, Catherine focused on her pregnancy, finding solace in designing the baby's nursery and engaging in philanthropic projects like the Oakwood Children's Hospital fundraiser. Her father, the esteemed attorney George Harrington, had warned her that building a marriage on secrets was like constructing a castle on quicksand. Catherine clung to the hope that her father's words would not ring true in her life. Every moment of unease, every fleeting suspicion, she pushed aside. The Farnsworth family had a carefully curated public image. If it wavered, their empire could falter. What Catherine didn't realize was that the cracks in the foundation had already begun to spread. Maxwell was on the cusp of making a move, one that would challenge everything she knew about marriage, loyalty, and self-worth. Months before the college reunion invite arrived, Maxwell crossed paths with Juliana Hartford at a swanky rooftop event in Manhattan. She was introduced to him by a mutual acquaintance, the influential socialite Sondra Drake, who had a penchant for attracting drama like moths to a flame. Juliana, a striking brunette with piercing green eyes, worked for an international PR firm, or so she claimed. But in reality, her lifestyle suggested far greater financial resources than a typical PR salary would allow. Maxwell noticed Juliana the moment she walked into the room, swathed in an emerald silk gown that turned heads wherever she stepped. Their first conversation was brief, a simple exchange of polite remarks about the weather, the champagne brand, and the spectacular view. But something in her gaze made Maxwell feel alive, powerful, like the king of the hill. He had grown used to people praising him, wanting a piece of his success. Juliana seemed different, self-assured, mysterious, and unafraid. A couple of weeks later, Maxwell's phone buzzed with an unknown Manhattan number. Out of curiosity, he answered. "Hello, Maxwell Farnsworth. This is Juliana Hartford. I believe we met briefly at Sondra Drake's event. I was hoping we could speak about a potential PR partnership for Farnsworth Holdings." He hesitated. Catherine usually handled philanthropic collaborations, and Farnsworth Holdings had a robust in-house PR team. Yet the memory of Juliana's confidence enticed him. "Certainly," he replied, feigning professional interest. "Let's schedule a meeting." Their lunch at the exclusive Redwood Club in Midtown soon became an unplanned afternoon. Juliana had a gift for flattery, complimenting Maxwell on his bold real estate developments and philanthropic gestures. She made him feel like the center of the universe, asking pointed questions about his ambitions, his vision. He found himself opening up in ways he rarely did, mentioning his struggles with balancing personal life and business. Juliana listened with genuine intrigue, occasionally placing a gentle hand on his forearm to emphasize her empathy. Over dessert, a decadent chocolate mousse, Juliana leaned forward. "You know, you shouldn't have to carry all this alone," she said, her voice sultry. "A man like you deserves a partner who truly understands his drive and passion." Maxwell found himself momentarily breathless. Catherine was supportive, yes, but her quiet manner often left him craving more excitement. By contrast, Juliana seemed to read his every desire. When the lunch concluded, he insisted on paying the exorbitant bill. She offered to split it, but he refused, claiming, "I never let a lady pay." Though he didn't immediately jump into an affair, that lunch sparked something inside him, a gnawing hunger for danger and novelty. Phone calls turned into more lunches, dinners, and eventually clandestine weekends. The day Maxwell and Juliana first shared a suite at the Belrose Hotel in Boston, he felt a surge of reckless freedom. He told himself he wasn't betraying Catherine permanently, he was merely stepping outside the constraints of his polished life for a moment of indulgence. But like a fire left unchecked, desire grew uncontrollable. Each rendezvous with Juliana awakened a new level of risk-taking. Maxwell started using Farnsworth Holdings resources to cover some of their travels. He lied about urgent business expansions to Catherine, and for a while he successfully juggled both worlds. Only fate had other plans that would come to a head when Maxwell decided that the upcoming Farnsworth College reunion would be his chance to show off just how unstoppable he was. Little did he suspect that his wife, pregnant and seemingly calm, had begun to piece together the truth and was quietly planning her response. Catherine Farnsworth was no stranger to the subtle art of observation. She had grown up watching her father, George Harrington, dismantle complex cases in courtrooms with nothing more than fragments of evidence. As a child, she would peek into her father's study, noticing how he meticulously sifted through documents, using logic and intuition to expose hidden truths. That attention to detail seemed etched into her very being. So when Maxwell's late-night excuses piled up, conference call with Dubai, property inspection in Hartford, emergency flight to Chicago, Catherine sensed something amiss. At first, she ignored it. She was, after all, pregnant and more susceptible to stress, but the evidence became increasingly impossible to dismiss. Her first clue was an offhand remark by their housekeeper, Marta Lorenz. One evening, Catherine came home from a prenatal yoga session to find Marta cleaning the foyer. "Oh, Mrs. Farnsworth." Mr. Farnsworth left a pair of ladies' sunglasses on the kitchen counter. "I put them away in the hall closet, thinking they might be yours." Catherine frowned. "But I don't wear that brand, or that style." She decided not to press Marta further, but her heartbeat quickened. Then came the credit card bills. Catherine handled much of their household budgeting, so it wasn't unusual for her to see large sums. But certain charges stood out: a boutique spa in Boston, a romantic waterfront restaurant in Newport, a diamond bracelet from a high-end jeweler, none of which she had received. She recalled that Maxwell had indeed visited Boston and Newport, but supposedly for business. So why charge personal items to their card? Fighting nausea that had nothing to do with pregnancy, she quietly saved screenshots of these statements. She even hired a discreet personal investigator, recommended by her father's old legal associate, Daniel Merritt. This investigator confirmed that Maxwell had been spotted multiple times with a brunette in her late 20s, identified as Juliana Hartford, entering exclusive hotels under an alias. The heartbreak Catherine felt was numbing, yet she forced herself to remain composed. Every passing day, Maxwell's sweet gestures, flowers after he returned from a supposed business trip, surprise spa vouchers felt like hollow camouflage for his guilt. But Catherine played her part, smiling politely, never betraying her knowledge. She knew a confrontation without the right leverage might backfire. Maxwell was a formidable figure, capable of twisting narratives to suit himself. She had seen him do it in board meetings, turning the tide of opposition into fervent support with smooth talk. Catherine had no intention of picking a fight she couldn't win. She was pregnant, emotionally raw, and needed to protect herself and her unborn child. So instead, she quietly strategized, recalling her father's lessons. Gather all the evidence first, then strike when the time is right. And the perfect opportunity to test Maxwell's loyalty and her own resolve arrived in the form of a crisp ivory envelope bearing the Farnsworth College insignia. Their 10th-year college reunion was scheduled in 3 weeks, complete with cocktail receptions and an alumni banquet. Maxwell was an alumnus. Catherine was not, but she had assumed she would accompany him. He spoke of it as a highlight event every 5 years. Yet something in his hesitant mention of the upcoming reunion made Catherine suspect that bigger plans were afoot. Juliana Hartford strutted into Maxwell's office in Midtown Boston as if she owned the place. She wore a form-fitting navy dress, her eyes sparkling with confidence. Maxwell had invited her under the guise of discussing a new PR campaign for Farnsworth Holdings. In truth, he wanted to see her away from prying eyes at restaurants. Inside his plush office, abstract art adorned the walls, and the panoramic windows overlooked the city. On the desk lay the invitation to the Farnsworth College reunion. Juliana noticed it immediately. Reunion. "So that's why you seemed a bit rattled this week," she teased, picking up the embossed card and reading it. Maxwell leaned back in his leather chair, exhaling. "The Farnsworth College reunion is a big deal for me. It's the place where I started building relationships that led to my first major investment deals. I have a reputation to uphold." Juliana raised a delicate eyebrow. "I'm guessing your wife usually attends these things as your polished arm candy." He stiffened. "She's not arm candy. Catherine's, well, she's been the perfect spouse for public events. But this time, I'm not sure I want her there. Our marriage is complicated, especially now with the baby." Juliana pursed her lips. "You've never spoken much about how you plan to balance fatherhood with your other life. Maxwell bristled at her boldness. He had never liked giving anyone a glimpse of vulnerability. But Juliana had a knack for cornering him. Let's just say Catherine and I have grown distant. She doesn't question me about my work. I find that convenience helpful. Juliana smirked, brushing her hair back. So if you're so distant, why not finalize the separation? Are you afraid of the backlash or the money you might lose? Maybe it's time for a fresh start. You and I. He held up a hand. Juliana, it's not that simple. Catherine is pregnant with my child. Leaving her outright right now would destroy my image, not to mention the fallout legally. Besides, my father's philanthropic legacy is tied to her family's networks. The Farnsworth name has weight because of how she and I present ourselves as a power couple. I need to handle this carefully. She gave a half smile. You're always strategic, Maxwell, but that's why I'm drawn to you. She traced a fingertip along his desk, pausing near the reunion invitation. Anyway, back to this little event. If Catherine won't be attending, maybe I should. He laughed nervously. And cause a scene? The alumni board might keel over if I brought a date who wasn't my wife. No, it's out of the question. Juliana shrugged with feigned innocence. It could be interesting. Besides, wouldn't it be nice for you to show off a new side to your life? The side that's more fun, less stiff. We wouldn't have to parade ourselves as a couple. I could merely happen to be at the reunion on some pretense about meeting potential PR clients or donors. Maxwell paused. There was a twisted thrill in the idea of bringing his mistress into the circle that once idolized him as the charismatic golden boy who had married the perfect woman. It was reckless, certainly, but maybe it was a way to test how far he could go before the facade cracked. Their conversation ended with no firm plans, but an unspoken understanding lingered. Juliana Hartford was not content to remain in the shadows. She wanted validation, attention, and Maxwell Farnsworth was on the brink of giving it to her, heedless of the disastrous consequences that might await. In the days leading up to the reunion, Catherine noticed Maxwell's agitation growing. He seemed torn between wanting her to accompany him and maneuvering for her to stay behind. Whenever she mentioned the upcoming weekend, he quickly changed the subject, offering vague comments like, "We'll see," or "Let's talk about it later." Meanwhile, Catherine continued her quiet observations. She checked Maxwell's phone records discreetly, of course, and found repeated calls to Juliana Hartford's number. She recognized it from the investigator's files. Each discovery felt like a fresh stab of betrayal, but she kept her emotions locked away. She had a plan, and it required her to remain calm. One evening, Catherine sat in the library, her feet propped on an ottoman, as she lightly massaged her growing belly. She was reading an email from Farnsworth College's alumni board, welcoming her and Maxwell to the reunion. The email also listed a scheduled cocktail reception on Friday, a campus tour on Saturday morning, followed by a lavish banquet that evening. Catherine wondered if Maxwell intended to skip the entire affair or attend alone. Just then Maxwell walked in, loosening his tie. He hovered near the door, as though uncertain if he should enter. "Long day," he muttered. "I'm thinking about heading to bed." "You haven't eaten," Catherine observed gently. "I could have Marta prepare something." He shook his head. "Not hungry." She paused, closing her laptop. "Maxwell, about the reunion. Are we going or not? The board has written to say they're expecting both of us." He gave a half-hearted shrug, not meeting her eyes. "I'm not sure. Things at Farnsworth Holdings are crazy. Might not be the best time for me to waltz around campus." Catherine offered a patient smile. "Well, it's just a weekend. And you always used to talk about how those reunions were important for networking. If you don't want me to come, that's fine. I don't want to be a burden, especially in my state." She placed a hand over her belly, feigning concern. Maxwell's gaze flickered to her stomach. "It's not that. Maybe you should stay here and rest." Doctors often advise pregnant women not to travel unnecessarily. You're entering your third trimester soon. His concern sounded forced. Catherine had flown to Europe in her second trimester with no issues, and he hadn't complained then. "If that's how you feel," she said softly, "I understand." A moment passed in tense silence, and Maxwell nodded curtly. "Yes, let's do that." He left, shutting the door behind him. Catherine leaned back in her seat, tears prickling at her eyes. She felt the sting of his rejection, but she also felt a grim satisfaction her suspicions were confirmed. Something at that reunion had him determined to keep her away. Whatever it was, she intended to uncover it. She had an ace up her sleeve she wasn't prepared to reveal yet, but soon enough, Maxwell Farnsworth would realize that Catherine was neither clueless nor powerless. She placed a hand on her belly, whispering, "It'll all be okay, I promise." A sprawling stone archway decorated with Farnsworth College's emblem greeted alumni as they arrived. The stately campus, known for its ivied buildings, manicured lawns, and historic clock tower, buzzed with excitement over the weekend's festivities. High-profile alumni, from tech moguls to political rising stars, flew in for the occasion. Maxwell Farnsworth landed in Boston by private helicopter, a calculated show of status. He and Juliana had planned an elaborate ruse. Officially, Juliana was in town on business for her PR firm, and she coincidentally decided to drop by Farnsworth College to meet some potential clients in the philanthropy sector. It was cunning and, to Maxwell, dangerously exhilarating. Yet, the closer he got to campus, the more an uneasy feeling gnawed at him. Catherine had been unnervingly calm about staying behind. She had not argued or acted suspicious. She even seemed to encourage him to go without her, citing her need for rest. Maxwell couldn't help but wonder if her acceptance was genuine or if she had somehow figured out his plan. He arrived at the Friday cocktail reception alone. The event took place in the Great Hall, a grand space with marble columns and crystal chandeliers. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne, and alumni mingled in designer outfits. Maxwell moved through the crowd like a king returning to his domain. He exchanged pleasantries, boasted of his latest real estate projects, and accepted compliments on his upcoming fatherhood. Within an hour, Juliana made her entrance. She wore a sleek black cocktail dress that accentuated every curve. Heads turned as she walked in, scanning the room with an air of poised confidence. Maxwell's heart pounded. They had agreed to keep their interactions limited to subtle glances and occasional small talk, but the tension crackled between them. By the second hour, an older professor, Dr. Harold Whitman, recognized Maxwell and insisted he join a circle of esteemed alumni. Juliana slid into the conversation, introduced by a mutual acquaintance as an innovative PR consultant. Maxwell introduced himself with polite formality, as though meeting Juliana for the first time. Yet, the amused glimmer in her eyes told a different story. Across the hall, Maxwell's old roommate, Darren Moss, eyed the pair with curiosity. Darren approached Maxwell discreetly. "Where's Catherine? I was looking forward to seeing her." "I heard she's expecting." Maxwell forced a casual grin. "She's well, just couldn't travel right now. Doctor's orders." Darren nodded slowly. "Makes sense, I suppose. You know, I thought I saw pictures of you traveling together not too long ago. Guess her condition changed?" There was a hint of suspicion in Darren's tone. Maxwell stiffened, but Juliana smoothly interrupted, handing him a fresh flute of champagne. "Maxwell, darling, you promised to show me those new campus renovations. Care to lead the way?" Grateful for the escape, Maxwell hurried off with her, leaving Darren standing with raised eyebrows. As they walked through the corridors, Maxwell pulled Juliana aside. "We should be careful. My old friends are asking questions." Juliana smirked, wrapping a hand around his arm. "Relax. The more we pretend we have nothing to hide, the less people will suspect." Her eyes sparkled with confidence. Yet, as the night wore on, Maxwell caught himself repeatedly checking his phone, half expecting a text from Catherine. None came. The anxious undercurrent he felt back home continued to intensify. He was playing a high-stakes game, and he couldn't shake the feeling that Catherine, though absent, was still one step ahead. Back at the Farnsworth estate in Martha's Vineyard, Catherine found herself surrounded by a deafening stillness. Maxwell's absence, combined with the staff's respectful distance, left her all too much time to think. She paced her bedroom, one hand protectively over her belly, the other gripping her phone. Her father, George Harrington, had called earlier to check in, a retired attorney with a lifetime of insight into people's hidden motives. George remained calm yet supportive. "You've made your decisions, Kat," he had said. "Now follow through. If you need me, I'm only a phone call away." She scrolled through social media, half expecting to see a flurry of reunion pictures. The Farnsworth College alumni page was already brimming with snapshots. Smiling graduates clinking glasses, group photos in the Great Hall, and scenic campus tours. She spotted Maxwell in the background of one photo, standing beside a striking brunette. She zoomed in. Though the woman's head was turned slightly, Catherine recognized that posture, the color of her hair. It was Juliana Hartford. A wave of nausea crashed over her. She closed the app, fighting the urge to destroy her phone in rage. She inhaled deeply, recalling the breathing techniques her prenatal yoga instructor had taught her. Steady, deliberate breaths. She had come to a decision 2 nights before Maxwell's departure. It involved a meeting with her father's legal associate, Daniel Merritt. Together, they reviewed the prenuptial agreement Catherine had signed. Back then, she and Maxwell were in love, but her father insisted on certain clauses to protect her family's assets. Should Maxwell engage in gross misconduct like adultery, there were triggers that could shift massive portions of Farnsworth holdings under her control, especially if she bore Maxwell's child. "I never wanted it to come to this," Catherine had whispered to Daniel, "but it seems inevitable." Daniel had placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You have a right to protect yourself and your baby. Once Maxwell's affair is undeniably proven, we can move forward, if you choose to." Now, as Maxwell reveled at the reunion with his mistress, Catherine felt a mix of determination and heartbreak. She had evidence photos, credit card statements, eyewitness accounts. She was pregnant, fulfilling her side of their marital agreement. The puzzle pieces were aligning. Yet Catherine wasn't solely interested in the financial ramifications. She still felt a deep sense of betrayal, a searing pain that the man she loved had chosen to flaunt another woman publicly. Her main concern remained the future of her child. She wanted stability, not chaos. She had to ensure Maxwell didn't jeopardize that. By midnight, she made her final preparations. She penned a brief letter, scanning it for any sign of weakness. The words were straightforward, an ultimatum that would make Maxwell realize the gravity of his choices. If he wanted to humiliate her by bringing his mistress to his cherished reunion, she would respond in a way that struck at the core of his empire. Sliding the letter into a sealed envelope, she placed it in the top drawer of her antique writing desk. Then, with as much peace as she could muster, she switched off her bedside lamp, praying that a measure of calm would find her before dawn. Saturday dawned bright over Farnsworth College. The campus tour was in full swing, alumni wandering the grounds they once called home. Maxwell led Juliana to the newly renovated Farnsworth Hall, named after his grandfather, who had been a major benefactor to the college decades ago. He couldn't help but feel a certain pride as he showed her around, pointing out the modern additions he had funded. However, each proud moment was tempered by a gnawing guilt. These halls bore his family name, and here he was, parading his mistress around while his pregnant wife waited at home. Juliana seemed unbothered, chatting amiably with other alumni she encountered, receiving compliments on her impeccable sense of style. "Who's your husband?" someone asked her, noticing she wasn't wearing any class ring or name tag. Juliana flashed a dazzling smile. "Oh, I'm not an alumna. Just here meeting potential PR clients." Maxwell was kind enough to show me around. Most people accepted this explanation without a second thought. After all, Farnsworth College events often included outside professionals seeking partnerships. But a few, like Darren Moss, eyed Juliana with barely concealed suspicion. In hushed whispers, rumors started. Who is this stunning woman with Maxwell Farnsworth? Where is his wife, Catherine? As lunchtime approached, a barbecue reception was set up near the campus lake. Alumni gathered around picnic tables, reminiscing and taking selfies for social media. Maxwell decided to circulate among old colleagues, leaving Juliana to mingle on her own for a bit. He needed to appear to be the charming, involved alumnus, not simply an escort to a mysterious stranger. While he was locked in conversation with a group of finance professionals, his phone buzzed in his pocket. Catherine's name lit up the screen. Hesitant, Maxwell stepped away to answer. "Catherine," he greeted, feigning warmth. "How are you feeling?" Her voice was steady, devoid of emotion. "I'm doing well enough, thank you. I wanted to let you know that some documents arrived at the house this morning, papers related to Farnsworth Holdings. Your signature is needed." Maxwell frowned. "Documents? From who?" "They came from Daniel Merritt's office," Catherine replied, referencing the law firm that sometimes handled Farnsworth family matters. He said, "It's urgent. Something about ensuring everything is in proper order regarding our child's future." A jolt of anxiety shot through him. "Why didn't you mention this before?" "I only received them today," Catherine said calmly. "It's nothing to worry about, I'm sure. But Daniel was insistent on your signature. Perhaps you could return tonight, or tomorrow morning at the latest." Maxwell swallowed hard. Okay. I'll see what I can do." The call ended. He glanced back at Juliana, who was laughing with a group of alumni near the lake. The sense of danger returned tenfold. Documents. Urgent. Child's future. His father-in-law's influence loomed in his mind. George Harrington had always been protective of Catherine, especially regarding finances and legalities. For a moment, Maxwell considered leaving immediately, but the lure of this final day of the reunion, topped off by the Saturday evening banquet, was strong. It was a platform where he could solidify new deals, maintain his star status. He told himself the documents could wait until tomorrow. Catherine's calm tone unnerved him, but he pushed aside the warning signs. By the time he put his phone away, he decided on a compromise. He'd stay for the banquet tonight, then leave the campus first thing Sunday morning. Let Catherine wait. He was entitled to this weekend, wasn't he? He had worked hard for his success, and if he wanted to enjoy the reunion with Juliana, so be it. And yet, he could not shake the whisper of dread that clung to him like a spectre, suggesting that Catherine had more power over him than he dared to admit. Saturday night's banquet was the reunion's crown jewel, held in the opulent Morgan Hall ballroom. A shimmering crystal chandelier hung from the vaulted ceiling, and the tables were draped in rich burgundy linens bearing the college crest. Alumni arrived in glamorous evening wear, eager to dine, dance, and rub elbows with old friends and potential business connections. Maxwell entered with Juliana on his arm, a daring move that did not go unnoticed. Conversations hushed briefly as the pair swept into the ballroom, resuming only after guests exchanged meaningful glances. Maxwell forced a confident smile, nodding at acquaintances who greeted him. Juliana looked radiant in a sleeveless silver gown that accentuated her graceful figure. She wasted no time striking up conversations with people of influence: trustees, donors, department heads. Her quick wit and unyielding poise charmed nearly everyone, though Maxwell noticed some stolen glances of disapproval. At a table near the stage, Maxwell's old friend, Darren Moss, watched the scene unfold with furrowed brows. Sitting beside him was Dr. Regina Porter, an esteemed professor who once taught Maxwell ethics in business. They whispered quietly, occasionally nodding in Maxwell's direction. Maxwell pretended not to see them, focusing instead on Juliana's enthralling presence. As dinner was served salmon with a delicate dill sauce, roasted vegetables, and fine wine, Juliana skillfully guided the conversation at their table. She asked questions about Farnsworth College's future, about potential expansions, about philanthropic initiatives. Maxwell occasionally interjected with boasts of his business success. But behind his measured facade, nerves rattled. The phone call from Catherine still echoed in his mind. Documents. Daniel Merritt. Urgent. Child's future. He couldn't help wondering if this was the day his carefully balanced double life would implode. Halfway through the meal, the MC stepped onto the stage, tapping the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Farnsworth College 10th year reunion banquet. We are grateful for your presence. Tonight, we're especially proud to honor some of our most distinguished alumni who've contributed significantly to the college's growth. A ripple of applause spread through the room. Maxwell straightened in his seat, anticipating his cue. He had donated a substantial sum earlier that year, ensuring Farnsworth Hall was modernized. The college's administration had promised him a moment of recognition. Sure enough, the MC announced, "And now a heartfelt thank you to Mr. Maxwell Farnsworth, class of 2030, whose generous support has revolutionized our campus facilities. Mr. Farnsworth, would you please join us on stage?" Maxwell rose, buttoning his tuxedo jacket. He approached the stage, glancing at Juliana, who flashed him a supportive smile. Stepping up to the microphone, he gave a brief, practiced speech about legacy, education, and future generations. The crowd applauded, cameras flashed, and Maxwell felt a surge of pride. This was his world, a place where he basked in admiration and power. As he left the stage, a tiny voice in the back of his mind reminded him that Catherine should have been there to share in his moment. But he dismissed the thought and returned to Juliana, relishing the attention and the envious looks some alumni cast in his direction. For now, at least, his secret seemed safe. Little did he know the night was far from over, and that the calm he had counted on would soon be shattered by a single move Catherine was about to make. As the banquet roared on into the night, Catherine Farnsworth sat in her softly lit living room, sipping herbal tea. A gentle ocean breeze wafted through the open French doors. She wore a loose, comfortable gown that draped over her pregnant belly. She looked serene, but inside, her heart pounded with a subdued intensity. Earlier that evening, she had placed a single phone call to Farnsworth College administration, carefully selecting her words. She didn't reveal her identity, merely requested that a note be delivered to Maxwell Farnsworth during the banquet's halfway point. The staff, ever eager to accommodate an illustrious donor's spouse, agreed without question. At precisely 9 o'clock, Catherine's phone dinged a message from a discreet courier. Delivery made successfully. Catherine glanced at the clock, imagining the scene. Maxwell likely basking in the glow of admiration, Juliana at his side. She took a breath, recalling her father's advice that a single, well-timed action could shift the balance of power. Sitting beside her was an unopened baby blanket, sent as a gift from old family friends. She ran her fingers over its soft material, thinking about the future that lay ahead for her child. She was resolved in her course of action. Maxwell needed to realize the stakes of his betrayal. Calmly, she typed a short email to Daniel Merritt, confirming that their plan was in motion. She then turned to something far more personal, her diary. In it, she penned her emotions without filter. I have loved Maxwell from the moment he stepped into my life, brimming with ambition. He's not just the father of my child, but the man I wanted to grow old with. Now, I feel so much pain, but also clarity. My father always taught me never to let someone else define my worth. Tonight, I'm setting boundaries. If Maxwell chooses to cross them, then he was never truly mine. Setting down the pen, she felt an odd mixture of sadness and empowerment. She wondered how Maxwell would react when he received her missive, a piece of paper that held the power to change everything. Perhaps he would ignore it, or maybe he'd panic. One thing was certain: he would finally see that Catherine was no passive bystander in their marriage. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from the courier, this time accompanied by a photograph. Catherine's breath caught in her throat. The photo showed Maxwell in the banquet hall, wearing his tuxedo, scanning a paper in his hands, his complexion drained of color. Beside him, the glamorous brunette Catherine, recognized from the investigator's pictures, leaned over, trying to read the note as well. Catherine felt a twinge of heartbreak. So it's really her, she thought. He's parading her in public. But she remained composed. She had expected nothing less. Taking one final sip of her tea, she closed her eyes and gently placed a hand on her belly. She whispered, "It's almost over, and soon we'll be free." With that, she switched off the living room light, heading upstairs to rest. Her calm, unwavering presence stood in sharp contrast to the storm she had unleashed hundreds of miles away. Maxwell Farnsworth was mid-conversation with a board trustee when a server discreetly handed him a small envelope. The server said, "Pardon me, Mr. Farnsworth. A note arrived for you." Curiosity piqued, Maxwell stepped aside to open it. Juliana, ever watchful, drifted closer. Inside the envelope was a simple folded paper. Printed on it were only a few lines. "Maxwell, we both know what's happening here. I won't fight in public, but I will protect our child and myself at any cost. Please read the attached letter carefully." Catherine, his throat constricted. Tucked behind this note was a single sheet from Daniel Merritt's law office. It laid out, in excruciating detail, the morality clause in their prenuptial agreement. Signed by Maxwell years ago, it stated that if he committed adultery, especially during Catherine's pregnancy, the division of assets would default to a special condition awarding Catherine a controlling share of Farnsworth Holdings. The baby, upon birth, would become the primary beneficiary of additional trusts and real estate titles. The letter ended with a stark conclusion: if Maxwell's infidelity was confirmed, he'd lose not only moral standing, but effective control of the empire he had built. His vision blurred. He had been vaguely aware of these clauses, but never imagined Catherine would enforce them. The thought of losing his fortune, his name, his entire business empire, this was a blow far beyond any personal embarrassment. Instantly, beads of sweat formed on his brow. Juliana, noticing his pale expression, placed a hand on his shoulder. "What is it? Are you okay?" He crumpled the letter in his fist, ignoring the stares of nearby guests. It's nothing." "Work emergency," he lied, but his trembling voice betrayed him. Darren Moss, who had been hovering around, raised an eyebrow. "Maxwell, you look like you've seen a ghost." Maxwell forced a laugh, though it sounded hollow. "All good, just something from the office. Excuse me." Clutching Juliana's arm, he guided her away from the crowd, finding a quiet corner near a corridor leading to the restrooms. "Is something wrong?" Juliana asked, her voice tinged with concern, but also a trace of impatience. She was used to seeing Maxwell in control. He glared at her, eyes wild. "Catherine knows. She's turning my own contract against me. If she decides to push this, I stand to lose everything: my holdings, my properties, everything." Juliana's eyes widened, then hardened. "That's ridiculous." Can she really do that? Maxwell's jaw clenched. Apparently so. Her father insisted on a morality clause when we got married. I never thought it would matter. She's so level-headed. I never expected her to invoke it. Juliana took a shaky breath. So what do we do now? He paced, running a hand through his hair. We? You can do nothing. I need to fix this. My entire livelihood, my public image, everything is at stake. Juliana frowned, something akin to jealousy flickering across her face. What about us? He laughed bitterly. Us? I have to salvage my standing. Maybe this was a mistake. The words tumbled out before he could stop them. Fear and panic clouded his judgment. Juliana stiffened, her lip curling. A mistake? You pursued me, Maxwell. Don't blame this on me now that it's inconvenient. They stood in tense silence, glaring at each other, while the clamour of the banquet continued just beyond the corridor. Maxwell realized that Catherine's calm facade had been a strategic shield for a devastating strike. One envelope, a single move, and he found himself on the brink of losing everything. If he didn't return home immediately, if he didn't beg for forgiveness, he might never recover from this. But was that even an option anymore? As the final hour of the banquet ticked by, Maxwell's mind raced. The warm glow of the ballroom felt suffocating, the cheerful chatter of his old classmates like a distant roar. He stared at Juliana, who seemed just as anxious. She sipped champagne more fervently now, her eyes darting around. The thrill of sneaking around had abruptly vanished, replaced by the cold reality of consequences. He needed a plan. Could he deny the affair? Catherine's father, George Harrington, was an esteemed attorney. He'd undoubtedly gathered a fortress of evidence. The images of Maxwell and Juliana checking into hotels, the credit card receipts, the text messages. He had been too careless. Panic fluttered in his chest. In the eyes of the law and public opinion, he was guilty as charged. Juliana approached him, her voice low. Maxwell, maybe we should leave. People are staring, and you're not looking well. He nodded tersely, pressing a palm to his temples. A pounding headache threatened to split his skull. Together, they made a hasty exit, ignoring the curious glances and whispers that trailed them through the ornate hallway and out the door. They walked in tense silence to Maxwell's limo, parked outside the venue. Once inside, Maxwell collapsed into the seat, massaging his temples. "Driver, head back to the hotel," he ordered, voice strained. Juliana sat beside him, fiddling with the hem of her gown. "So what happens now?" He looked at her, his eyes haunted. "I need to go back to Catherine. Figure this out. Grovel if I have to. Maybe I can salvage something." Her jaw tightened. "So you're just going to toss me aside?" Maxwell's temper flared. "I'm not talking about tossing anyone aside. I'm talking about survival. If Catherine files that paperwork, I'll lose Farnsworth Holdings. That includes control over expansions, board seats, everything. Investors will flee if they see a leadership crisis." Juliana swallowed her frustration. "Then do what you must. But don't expect me to wait indefinitely." He clenched his fists, his mind swirling. The driver sped through the streets, neon lights reflecting off the limo windows. Maxwell could almost sense his carefully curated life slipping away with each passing street lamp. He recalled Catherine's unwavering gaze, her pregnant belly. He had been so intoxicated by Juliana's excitement and charm that he had willfully ignored the quiet strength of his wife. By the time they arrived at the hotel, Maxwell was breathless with anxiety. I should get my things and leave for Martha's Vineyard tonight," he muttered. Juliana stepped out of the limo, arms crossed defensively. "Fine, I'll wait here, but don't keep me in the dark, Maxwell." He shot her a desperate look. "I'll call you." Up in his suite, Maxwell flung open his suitcase, tossing in clothes and toiletries haphazardly. He paused, seeing the silver cufflinks Catherine had gifted him on their anniversary. The memory of her soft smile that day tormented him. Why did I risk it all? He had no clear answer. Leaving the cufflinks behind, he zipped his luggage and hurried out. The driver loaded his bags, and they sped into the night. Maxwell stared out the window, a sinking feeling in his gut. The adrenaline rush of his affair had turned into a tidal wave of potential ruin. As dawn approached, the only certainty he had was that he needed to face Catherine and the reckoning she had so masterfully orchestrated. The Farnsworth estate was silent when Maxwell arrived in the early hours of Sunday. He let himself in with his key, stepping into the dimly lit foyer. The ticking of the antique grandfather clock in the hallway marked the passing seconds with a solemn rhythm. He set down his luggage, noticing how alien the house felt, as though it no longer belonged to him. He found Catherine in the sitting room, curled up on the sofa with a blanket. A single lamp illuminated her face, revealing puffy eyes and dark circles, a testament to the emotional toll she'd endured. She looked up at him, and their gazes locked. "Catherine," he began, voice cracking. She raised a hand to stop him. "Don't insult me with a denial." "I know everything, Maxwell." He nodded, tears burning at the corners of his eyes. "I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I got carried away." Catherine exhaled a shaky breath. "You think I care about your excuses? You were unfaithful while I carry our child. Then you flaunted her at your reunion. At least give me the respect of honesty." He sank into a nearby armchair, burying his face in his hands. "Yes, I betrayed you. I was selfish, craving something new, some rush. It was a horrible mistake." Catherine bit her lip, fighting back a wave of tears. "A mistake is forgetting a birthday. This was a betrayal. You broke our vows, Maxwell, and you did so publicly." She glanced at her belly. "It's not just me you betrayed. It's our baby." Silence enveloped them, a chasm of anguish and regret. After a moment, Catherine gathered the strength to speak again. "Daniel Merritt sent you those documents to show you what's at stake. I have every right to exercise my legal options. For the sake of our child and my own dignity, I won't stand by while you conduct a public affair." Maxwell paled. "Please, Catherine, don't take Farnsworth Holdings away from me. It's everything I've worked for." She looked at him with sorrowful eyes. "You worked for it. Yes, but I stood by your side, contributed my family's connections, and believed in you. Now you've made me doubt everything about our marriage. I can't ignore that." He swallowed hard. "Tell me what to do, anything. I'll fix this. If I need to end things with Juliana, I will." I've already left her." Catherine's expression remained resolute. "Ending the affair is the bare minimum. It doesn't erase what you've done, but it's a start. If you want a chance at redemption, you'll have to prove you can be faithful and devoted, not just for the sake of appearances, but genuinely." His tears spilled over now, an uncharacteristic display of vulnerability. "I love you, Catherine. I don't want to lose you." She inhaled sharply, conflicted. "Love should have mattered before you did all this. Whether we can salvage our marriage, I can't say. It won't happen overnight. For now, I'm focused on our child and my own well-being. We'll meet with Daniel Merritt soon to discuss the legal details and what role you'll play in this baby's life." Maxwell nodded. A wave of shame washing over him, he realized he stood at a crossroads. The empire he had built teetered on the brink of collapse, and his marriage was shattered. Yet Catherine had not completely slammed the door. The possibility of redemption lingered, conditional, fragile, and entirely dependent on his willingness to change. That night, Maxwell slept in a guest room. Catherine retreated to their master bedroom, locking the door. The next morning, she rose early, calling Daniel Merritt to begin negotiations. Whether Maxwell Farnsworth could truly repent and rebuild trust remained uncertain. But one fact was clear. Catherine had played her move with unshakable composure, proving that the quietest among us sometimes hold the greatest power. In the end, Maxwell Farnsworth found himself at a pivotal crossroad, facing the threat of losing his wife, his child's future, and the empire he once wielded with unchecked confidence. Catherine's calm, calculated maneuver, triggered by his shameless decision to flaunt his mistress, forced him to confront the painful truth of his betrayal. Amid the paparazzi whispers and high society speculation, Catherine stood resolute, determined to protect her dignity and her unborn baby. Will Maxwell redeem himself through genuine remorse and commitment, or will this be the final page of the Farnsworth saga? Only time and his willingness to change will tell. If you've been captivated by this tale of power, betrayal, and a pregnant wife's unwavering resolve, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring you more gripping stories about life's unexpected twists, moral reckonings, and the unbreakable strength of the human spirit. Thank you for watching,